What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel and to another 3D model. This week, we're going to be making an artillery weapon. So without further ado, let's just dive into it. So when it came to this week's model, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to make. To be honest, this whole month is probably the busiest month of the year for me, so I really didn't have a lot of time, like usual. And because this whole month has been quite stressful, I thought it would just be fun to relax a bit and make something that was just truly enjoyable, something that I really wanted to make just for fun. So I jumped online and on Pinterest, just scrolling through looking for the first image that would pop up that would interest me. And this was the first one that I found that looked very interesting. It was actually a little miniature from Warhammer. And I believe these were done from a studio named Gargoyles Studio. I could be wrong, but just wanted to give a shout out because this art looked really interesting. And I believe it was a very small miniature that you could order online to paint and add to your collection. And I thought recreating this would just be really fun. So I decided to go with this one. Now when it comes to models like this, it can look a little bit complex. Right off the bat, it looks like there's a lot of components going on, but to be honest, if we break it down, we really only have to make half of this artillery device and then duplicate everything over for the other side. So that really cuts down a lot of the objects in the scene. And if you look a little bit closer, a lot of them are very simplified. Because this is a miniature, there's not too much realistic complexity to a lot of these shapes. So there's not a lot of wires and little buttons. It's more or less really blocked out cylinders and cubes that just make up more or less a lot of the shapes in this object. And for some of the more complex things like the track, we really only have to model one little track piece and then we can duplicate it around in like a spline or something to create the whole track. So in reality, it's really not too complex. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I don't have a lot of time this week. I really have to wrap this up in one sitting. So we're just gonna try to fly through this and get it done as quickly as possible. And don't forget, if you want to see this full video in real time, which also includes the full UV mapping process, that video will be uploaded to my Patreon page, which you can find in the link in the description below. And you can also get access to working files like the Substance Painter file, or just the FBX model if you're interested in seeing it. All of that will be available on my Patreon page. Now, one thing I did want to mention, and I wish I did a bit more before I started this whole model, was look online for a bit more reference. After I gathered these two images, I just decided to start modeling because I didn't have a lot of time to kind of explore other components that could be on this object or other items I could add to make it really interesting. So that is one thing I would probably do differently, is just gather a bit more different reference so I have more options to choose from when it comes to piecing everything together. Now, one thing I wish I added were those tiny little explosives, like little cannon pieces or the ammo pieces that you would put into this device. There were a few in one of the reference photos when you were looking at the back end. So I originally just started making an inside component of that back piece you can open to basically load it with ammunition or with the missile or whatever it is. But I just honestly didn't have a lot of time at the end, so I was really scrambling to wrap it up. But it is one thing I wish I added to the scene. I'm sure there's other really fun components you can decide to add yourself if you're going to recreate it. But since I don't have a lot of time, we're going to use this reference as our main guidance to work towards. So shout out once again to Gargoyles Studio for inspiring this week's video and creating some really cool looking art. Now when it comes to the modeling, like I mentioned, we're only going to focus on one side. It's going to just make everything a lot easier, and I'm not going to worry about adding a lot of detail until the very end. To be honest, all those little tiny bolts, which look really cool, I decided to add that at the very last minute. So we're just going to simplify all these shapes at the beginning. We're not going to try to overcomplicate things, just block everything out, and then we can slowly refine those shapes to add a bit more detail to everything. So let's not waste any more time talking. Let's just continue blocking everything out and slowly piecing together our artillery weapon. Alright, so here is the artillery cannon in its finished form. And as you can see, I went ahead and basically took all the items on one side and I just duplicated them over to the other. So they're basically mirroring each other. There is one tiny, actually two items I decided to add throughout the UV mapping process, whereas there's actually a few, but majority of it is the exact same. There's this tiny thing on the top here. I decided to add this last minute. To be honest with you, I didn't even notice it throughout the whole modeling, and then while I was wrapping up the UVs, I was like, oh yeah, there's something here. And I like the idea of breaking it up a bit, adding a bit more basically different elements on both sides so they're not completely mirrored. Just makes it another component that makes it a bit more interesting to look at. So I just decided to really quickly model this. To be honest with you, it's this same cylinder over here, just shrunken down, made a little skinny and long. And then for these components, they're basically just how I did the other ones on this side. It's the exact same thing, just with the cylinder and then extruded a few faces. And another thing I added as well were a few tiny hoses or wires at the very back. In our reference, it didn't have any, probably because it's a small miniature. It just probably wouldn't print. I don't know. Either way, I thought it'd be cool just to add a few cords or wires or hoses at the back. Once again, just making another tiny component, just a bit different than everything else in the scene. And as you can see, they don't really even go anywhere. I knew you wouldn't see down here or in up here where these hoses go, so they're kind of just floating there in reality, but we're not going to worry about it because you're not going to see those tiny details. And other than that, the other thing are just all these tiny bolts. We UV'd and made one of them early on in the in the modeling process. So I just duplicated that once again and just honestly put them all over the place. Especially down the back, I really liked how there were so many of them. For some reason, I thought it looked interesting, so I thought I would replicate that and just copy basically the same idea into my model. Other than that, everything is the exact same. So let's go over the UVs. So if I open up my UV editor here, I basically decided to split this thing up. Oh, Canon, not like the camera. I don't even know why I called it cannon. I guess it's an artillery cannon or something like that, but don't worry about the name over here. But I basically decided to split it up into two groups for the two different textures that I have applied. So if you see later on in Substance in my texture set list, I will have two texture sets, and I basically just split those up into two groups. So in the first group is the body, the main cannon part, along with the back little components here. And the other one is basically the sides. So basically all I did here was, if I isolate this, I only modeled and UV'd half of them. And then once this was finished, I can just duplicate it over. So all these components are the same and they're all sharing the same UV space. And that just made my life a lot easier doing the UVs since we were scrambling to get those done at the last minute, but it just saved me a bunch of time. Especially because I UV'd along the way. Something I also wanted to mention, if you're trying to speed up your whole process, UVing one track before duplicating them all, or UVing one bolt before duplicating everything, just doing the UVs along the way really does shave down some time, so you don't have to come back and re-duplicate those shapes and remove them into the same places that you've already moved them. Because you don't like redoing work if you don't have to. Anyways, if you go through the body, the first texture, first group, it's pretty straightforward. Just try to keep my UV shells nice and straight just to take advantage of that real estate. You don't want to have a lot of wasted space, so I really squeezed everything in. Once again, gave priority to the larger shapes in my scene, so all these big components that are going to have, take up a lot of detail, or these ones, for example, I wanted to have like diamond plate, like a bump on it. So I wanted the UV shells to be quite large so you can see that detail. And all the less important ones, like this middle one, these little things, they're not too important, so those shells can be shrunken down. And then the same thing I did for the sides. So if I isolate this group, just really trying to take advantage of that real estate, really squeeze those UV shells in as tight as you can, take advantage of them. And once again, the really important ones, like this one here, I wanted to have a diamond plate, so I wanted this specific UV shell, the middle part here, to be a bit larger. And I also made cuts around the edges, so I can just add one material to this inside component without having to go through and maybe, selecting every certain face to add a material to. It just makes it easier having your UVs cut where you need it. But it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing special or unique. A lot of overlapping shells, which made the texturing, I guess, not necessarily tricky, but you just have to be careful to not see a lot of repeating patterns. So adding specific details, like one really big scratch on one bolt, well, you'd see that on every single bolt. So just avoiding those details wherever we could when it comes to the texturing. We'll go over that more soon enough, but just wanted to mention that when you're stacking your shells, you have to be aware that you're going to see repeating patterns if there's some obvious ones. But that's basically how I prepared this cannon. There's no high and low workflow, just one high poly mesh. Just wanted to have some fun this week. Now all we have to do is export this, jump over to Substance Painter, and we can start the texturing. And don't forget, if you want to see the full UV mapping process, that will be part of the real-time video I upload to Patreon. And you can find a video or a link to it in the description below. All right, so now jumping over to Substance Painter, we can start the texturing. And to be honest with you, I'm just going to be completely honest. I didn't do any research into how these artillery cannons are actually textured. Our reference was just showing it plain gray, probably because it's a little miniature that you paint and add your own detail to. But I honestly didn't have like barely any time. I was setting a cap of 1 hour to get my texturing done. I was doing this really late at night, and I just really had to do it before I go to bed because I didn't have any other time over the weekend to get really any work done with this model. So we were on a very short time frame for the texturing process, and this is one part that I wish I invested a bit more time into. Specifically, like I said, looking for reference. Looking around online, seeing how they are in the real world, seeing what details, what little things you find interesting that you can incorporate into your own model can make all the difference. And that's something I unfortunately didn't have a lot of time to do. So we're just gonna jump in and kind of wing it. I obviously looked really quickly, like as I was jumping into Substance, just to see what color they are. And if you look online, a lot of them are just plain green or gray, just typical military equipment. So I decided to not focus on looking for reference that I found interesting, so it would just be time consuming. And I decided to just have some fun and kind of wing it along the way and see what we come up with. Now, of course, because it's a military device or a weapon, I guess, it's going to be pretty straightforward. Just I was thinking metals, simple greens, grays, blacks, kind of have it a little bit used, worn out, not completely abused like it's been blown up, but I wanted to add some dirt, some darker components, really take advantage of the AO to make it look dark in those crevices and kind of see what we come up with. So if any of you are going to recreate this, I would love to see what direction you take it with the textures, because I feel like there's more we could have done by adding more labels on it. That's one thing I didn't do. I wish I added maybe more symbols, more labels, more nameplates, like stamped in nameplates or barcodes. There's just other elements I feel like we could have done to really bring this model a little bit more to life. But so since we're limited on time, I'm going to really take advantage of those smart materials. A lot of those come prepared really nicely with different layers and grunges. So we're going to start just filling in these empty meshes with some sort of smart material. I can find some sort of foundation that I like, and then we can add a bit more detail over top of that later on. And once again, I say this in almost every video, don't obsess over your textures right away. I feel like it can really drag on the process, and if you're working in a really short time frame, you need to crunch down to get something done. Not worrying about those details until the very end. So just fill in those meshes with some sort of texture, figure out what colors, what kind of base material you like, and then you can start adding in different fill layers to add more dirt and grunge and grime and different labels, like I said, and really anything. So let's just start filling in these textures or filling in these UV shells with different materials, and we can see what we come up with. Once again, you can find the full texturing process in real time along with the working files all on my Patreon page, which I will link in the description below. And other than that, let's start texturing our artillery cannon. Alright, that is the full 3D modeling, UV mapping, and texturing process that I did to create this artillery weapon. I really hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. If you did, hit that like button and please consider subscribing to the channel. And don't forget, you can find the full video in real time. You can get access to all the working files, and all of it is available on my Patreon page, which you can find the link in the description below. And as always, a massive thank you to all my patrons for your continuous support. It really helps me keep this channel going. And to be honest, it's because of all of you guys that I can actually continue making these videos. So thanks so much for supporting my art and supporting this page. If you're not part of my Patreon page, please consider subscribing. It goes an extremely long way in helping support my art. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this week's video, and I will catch you all in the next one.